On May 19th, Sundar Pichai stood on the Google I/O stage, promised a revolutionary AI, and told developers, "Give us until next month." The audience actually groaned, but next month came and went in total silence. Why? Because that highly anticipated model was already dead. Google's engineers secretly discovered the original Gemini 3.5 Pro was structurally broken. It couldn't generate code reliably, and the foundation couldn't be patched, so they took the nuclear option, flushing months of compute and millions of dollars. They scrapped the entire base model. Then they triggered a massive scramble to rebuild their flagship AI from scratch. 2 months late, it finally launched today. The new Gemini 3.5 Pro is a 2.1 million token context beast. It swallows 1,500 average-length documents in a single prompt, built for massive enterprise workloads. But the launch day reality is highly suspicious. It has a huge premium price tag, and Google released 0 official benchmarks. It was clearly rushed to meet a deadline. With 3 major AI models dropping in a single week, developers are in a decision crisis. The delay wasn't just corporate friction. It proves the AI frontier is so hard, even the biggest lab on Earth is hitting walls they can't patch.
All right, let's jump right into the absolute drama unfolding at the very edge of the AI frontier today. If you've been following the AI space, you know there's always noise, but what we're looking at right now is completely unprecedented. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to break down the launch of Google's newest flagship model, Gemini 3.5 Pro. But to actually understand what just launched, we first have to talk about what just got destroyed.
So if you're trying to figure out what Gemini 3.5 Pro actually is, well, here's the crazy part. The original version doesn't even exist anymore. Google literally deleted its own flagship AI. Just let that sink in for a second. The company with more AI compute than almost anyone else on the planet realized their most advanced model was broken, and they scrapped the whole thing. They rebuilt it from absolute scratch, and they told absolutely no one while it was happening.
To see where the cracks first appeared, we actually have to rewind a bit to May 19th, 2026. Sundar Pichai is standing on stage at Google I/O in front of thousands of developers, unveiling this massive leap forward. And then he drops these 5 words: "Give us until next month." Now, when he said that, the live audience of developers actually groaned out loud. They were just exhausted by the repeated delays. But little did they know, the delay was going to be much, much worse than just next month.
Section 1. The secret model rebuilt.
Let's unpack this hidden crisis. Following that May 19th promise, June rolls around and nothing. The deadline was totally missed and the model didn't ship. Now, officially, Google claimed in June that they were just gathering feedback from early users on anti-gravity and Elamina, tuning the model based on that data. It sounded like standard optimization, right? But the truth, which leaked in early July, was way more severe. They weren't just tweaking the model, they were starting over. And that brings us to today, July 17th, the actual launch, nearly 2 entire months late.
So what actually went wrong? Well, engineers discovered deep structural failures, specifically in recursive tool calling and SVG generation, which is basically how the AI creates scalable vector graphics and images. These weren't small bugs. These were flaws that fundamentally could not be patched. This forced Google to silently scrap the entire base model. We are talking about throwing away months of compute, millions of dollars, and restarting pre-training from absolute zero. It's just an incredible admission that their initial architecture simply could not do what they needed it to do.
Section 2. What Google actually built. 2.1 million. Take a second to wrap your head around that number. This is Gemini 3.5 Pro's new context window. In plain English, this means the AI can process roughly 1,500 average-length documents in a single, solitary prompt. If you're doing heavy, long-context retrieval, like sifting through massive legal contracts, giant code bases, or literally years of research, this thing is built exactly for that.
The big takeaway here is that Google is completely done playing it safe, and they're done playing catch-up on context size. They are now offering the largest context window of any frontier model currently in production. Compare this to Claude Opus 4.8, which maxes out at 1 million tokens right now, or the GPT file line, which usually sits somewhere between 128,000 and 1.5 million. Google has absolutely blown past the industry standard here.
But, and this is a massive but, that insane capability comes at a very steep cost. The economics here totally reverse the whole cheap Google myth we've been hearing. Gemini 3.5 Pro is not your daily driver, and it's definitely not competing on budget. At $15 per million input tokens and $60 per million output tokens, it absolutely dwarfs the cost of GPT-5 and Claude Sonnet 5. This is a highly expensive, ultra-premium flagship model designed for extremely hard reasoning tasks, and it's priced exclusively for high-end enterprise use cases.
And there's another major catch when it comes to what it can actually do. Please don't be fooled into thinking standard API access gives you the whole package. Google has introduced something called Deep Think, which is their extended reasoning mode. But if you want Google's advanced reasoning for complex stuff like the Humanities Last Exam or ARC-AGI-2 reasoning benchmarks, you have to pay for this ultra-premium tier. Standard API access only gets you the base model. Deep Think is gated strictly behind the ultra subscription tier at a staggering $250 per month.
Adding to the sheer chaos of this launch, Google shipped today with 0 independently verified benchmarks on an official model card. Literally none. All we have is an unconfirmed third-party report of an 82.4% score on GPQA Diamond, which is a notoriously difficult PhD-level science benchmark. The fact that Google, of all companies, shipped a major flagship model without publishing an official benchmark grid is a massive story in itself. It just highlights exactly how down to the wire this secret rebuild really was.
Section 3. The 10-Day Decision Crisis.
This launch couldn't have landed at a crazier time. Enterprise teams are facing an absolute decision crisis right now, because 3 of the most watched model releases of 2026 are all converging in this frantic, chaotic 10-day window. Look at this. You have Gemini 3.5 Pro dropping today, July 17th. Meanwhile, GPT 5.6 Sol, Terra, and Luna are continuing their government-vetted previews, with broader access still unconfirmed. And then, capping off this brutal window, DeepSeek v4 graduates to its stable release on July 24th. Developers are literally being forced to lock in their model stack for the rest of the year right now, while the options are shifting right beneath their feet. And smack in the middle of this evaluation crisis is a ticking clock. This is a hard, absolute date. On July 24th, DeepSeek v4 legacy API aliases retire. That means any application you currently have built on the old DeepSeek Chat or DeepSeek Reasoner names will physically break if you don't migrate by July 24th. This is not a soft deprecation, folks. It is a hard breaking change.
Section 4. Your action plan today.
Okay, so speaking directly to you, here is your immediate survival guide for navigating the chaos of the next week without completely breaking your production stack. Number 1. Fix your DeepSeek API calls. Go change DeepSeek, Chat, and Reasoner before July 24th, or your apps are going to go down. Number 2, if your enterprise handles massive documents, huge contracts, or code bases, get in there and test Gemini 3.5 Pro's 2.1 million context window today. Literally nothing else matches it in production. Number 3, keep the limits in mind. If you aren't paying that $250 Ultra tier, you aren't getting the Deep Think reasoning. And finally, number 4, hold off on making massive financial commitments to Gemini until Google actually drops an official model card with independently verified benchmarks. Let's leave on this thought. Google is a titan. The fact that they were pushing so hard against the limits of current architecture that their model structurally failed and had to be rebuilt from scratch, well, that tells you everything you need to know, doesn't it? Delays, massive rebuilds, government restrictions, these aren't signs of failure. They show how incredibly hard the frontier actually is right now. The ground is literally shifting daily. Make sure you subscribe to our Explainer series so you can understand this race clearly enough to make the right decisions when things are moving this incredibly fast. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Welcome to the debate. So imagine standing on a stage in front of thousands of people, promising the world's most powerful AI for next month, and just hearing the audience audibly groan.
Yeah, that was a rough moment.
Right? That was Google at I/O on May 19th. But today, July 17th, Gemini 3.5 Pro is, well, it's finally here. I'm going to argue that this model's massive secret rebuild is actually a triumph of engineering rigor at the frontier.
And I'll be arguing that the opaque process, plus the completely missing launch data really signals a rushed, flawed launch. Because, give us until next month basically turned into a total teardown.
It did, yeah.
The initial architecture literally collapsed under its own weight. We're talking about unpatchable structural failures where the AI would just get stuck in endless loops trying to use external software.
The recursive tool calling breakdown.
Exactly. That, and it would completely mangle SVG image generation.
Well, sure, but that collapse is exactly what happens when you push the physical limits of the frontier. AI attention mechanisms typically scale quadratically, right?
Right.
So as you exponentially increase the amount of text it can process, it takes exponentially more compute until the logic just breaks down. Realizing your architecture won't scale, throwing out months of compute, and restarting pre-training from scratch, I mean, that isn't a failure. That's ultimate engineering integrity.
I'd believe that if they were actually honest about it.
Honest.
Yeah. They hid that foundational structural collapse behind a PR cover story about gathering user feedback. In enterprise software, trust is currency. When you cover up a fundamental failure, you erode that trust.
Okay, but you can't just brush past the sheer scale of what that rebuild actually delivered, though, because they made that hard choice. You're now getting an unprecedented 2.1 million token context window.
Which is huge, I'll admit.
Yeah, that is processing about 1,500 average length documents simultaneously in a single prompt.
Sure, but at what cost to the developer?
Well,
Because of that expensive rebuild, they are now gating their DeepThink reasoning mode behind a $250 a month Ultra subscription.
it's premium, yes.
It's exorbitant. They're charging $15 per million input tokens and $60 per million output, which completely dwarfs GPT 5.5's pricing. And the kicker? They're demanding flagship prices without publishing an official model card or even an independently verified benchmark grid.
Look, you're paying for unparalleled cargo space here. Claude Opus 4.8 caps out at 1 million tokens for massive enterprise workloads, like processing legal discovery across thousands of case files at once. That raw capacity just pays for itself.
But a massive context window means absolutely nothing if the reasoning degrades at the end of it. Asking enterprises to pay those prices without benchmarks is it's like selling someone the world's largest warehouse without proving the forklift inside actually works.
I wouldn't say the forklift doesn't work.
All we have to justify it is an unconfirmed 82.4% on the GPQA diamond.
Which is the gold standard for PhD-level reasoning.
But it's literally just a pre-launch rumor right now. It's not verified data.
Which brings us to exactly why they had to launch today, even without the polished benchmark grid.
Oh, here we go.
The delay from the rebuild pushed them into a critical industry window. Developers just need hands-on access right now.
You mean they were forced to launch because of the DeepSeek migration next week?
I'd call it a convergence of timelines.
I'd call it a decision crisis. Next week, July 24th, DeepSeek v4 graduates from preview. Their legacy API aliases like DeepSeek Chat and DeepSeek Reasoner are retiring.
Right, the hard deadline.
If developers don't migrate their code by the 24th, their applications literally break. Releasing an expensive, unbenchmarked model right in the middle of this forces developers into an impossible blind gamble.
I really don't see it as a gamble. I see it as Google ensuring developers actually have the tool in hand before that hard deadline.
But without proof,
If you're going to lock in your AI stack for the rest of 2026, you need the opportunity to test that massive 2.1 million token capacity against DeepSeek on your own data.
assuming an engineering team has the budget, the bandwidth, and the patience to test an unverified model themselves in just 7 days.
Ultimately, this rebuild proves just how brutal the physics of the AI frontier really are. Throwing away a broken model to deliver unmatched context capacity is a rigorous, necessary recalibration.
And I maintain that launching a premium-priced model with a secretive history and zero official performance data warrants deep, serious enterprise skepticism.
Fair enough. Yet we both agree that if you're an enterprise developer listening right now, staring down that DeepSeek deadline next week, you are facing a critical moment to evaluate your infrastructure.
Exactly. The clock is officially ticking.
We encourage you all to dive into the material and evaluate Google's architectural leap for yourselves. It brings us back to that stage on May 19th when the crowd groaned.
The big question now is, was the wait worth it?